This is why no matter where you go, you see the name Imam Hussein alayhi salam. For the cities of Baghdad, the Sayyids' bodies were cut up in there. They used to kill up the Shia. And today all you see is the banners of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. From the courts of Sham, what do you hear today? Labbaik ya Hussein. Now do you understand when Sayyidah Zainab said, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. She saw nothing but the beauty of Allah. And she had that tawakkul. You see the world today, where are the graves of Yazid? No one even knows. Where's the Yazid of Muawiyah? They have to hide it from people. And look at the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Hazrat Abbas and the marches of Karbala. Millions around the world attend. World's largest gathering. That's why you understand it says that those who are killed in the way of Allah, they're not dead, they're alive. Spiritually and in our hearts. Always remember this. Now, Ashura was the rebirth of Islam. Islam was saved. When Imam Hussein was martyred, he gave revival to Islam on that day. And the last dua that Imam Hussein recited as he was being martyred, "Oh Allah, I trust you with every affliction, and I turn to you in every calamity." As you can see, he gave his heart only for Allah. This is how he became Dar Allah. And for giving his heart only to Allah and detaching it from this world, Allah put his love in the hearts of millions. This is what happens when you give your heart to Allah. His legacy is what protected the principles of Islam. Allah says in Surah Al-Saf, they desire to put out the light of Allah, but Allah only perfects it. Imam Hussein alayhi salam showed that to everyone. And the light of Allah will always shine bright, no matter what happens. When we attend these majalises, we get a little glimpse of this light. For those who come here every single day, and we listen to the stories that I've been telling you about the companions, about the martyrs, about the family of Ahl al-Bayt. For those that come and hear the story about Habib, you learn about friendship. You learn in moments in your life that you need to give up things for your friends. You learn how to become a companion of your Imam. So when you face the situations and you need to be there for your friends or be there for your Imam, you'll think about Habib. What did he do? When you think about Hazrat Hur, you learn from him how to conquer your soul, how to give up this world and understand that who's the right path. When Hazrat Hur alayhi salam had a choice to make, he said, I'm choosing between heaven and hell. And he chose the right choice. He gave up this worldly gains that he would get. So when you face the situations in your life, you learn from Hazrat Hur, what would I do? And you may learn from listening to these majalises what Hazrat Hur did in those situations. And it may influence your decisions. So you see how the light, slowly by slowly, it gets to you by these stories. Those people, you also learn from Hazrat Hur alayhi salam that Allah's mercy is limitless. So for those people who think that they have sinned too much, and you're there and you're doubting Allah's mercy and you're in despair, how can Allah ever forgive me? You think about Hazrat Hur and say, look what happened to him. In one night he became from the lowest of ranks to the highest of martyrs, of shuhada. In one night he would have not been remembered. Today look at his grave, look at his shrine in Iraq. Millions go there to visit him. So you remember those things in these moments. When you think about bravery, and you learn about bravery of the youths of Ali Akbar and Qasim, when you're in your life, in situations, especially the youth, they face situations which they have to give into their desires of this life and this world, or give into what Allah wants. They learn from Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam and Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam that even though you're a youth and you have all these desires, you learn and you think, what would they do in this situation? For them, the love of Allah is greater than all. You learn selflessness from Hazrat Abbas, for who had the chance to drink the water, but he didn't drink the water, for he had promised. You learn loyalty. He had promised to go back to the water. So when you face situations in your life, you have to face loyalty. You learn and you think about Hazrat Abbas. You face situations in your life where you have to be selfless, and you have to make a choice. Should I put my needs above someone else or others' needs above mine? You think about Hazrat Abbas and loyalty and selflessness. And you think, what would he do? You learn from that situation, that moment he didn't take that water. You learn to put the needs of others before yourselves, brothers and sisters. And which is to live a selfless life. And which is needed today. If you think about others before yourself, the world will be beautiful, brothers and sisters. At moments when you're tested with trials and tribulations, you think about the patience of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. So when you face tough situations in your life, you think of when she said she saw nothing but the beauty of Allah. And you understand what I mentioned before, that Allah's promise is always true and He's always there with you. And He's with those who are patient. It'll be a light out of darkness for you people, especially when you're facing moments of despair. These lessons teach us how to walk with the light of Allah. The first verse I started with in these lectures was that Allah revives the hearts which were dead and He makes them walk amongst the people with a light. Now you see how you can walk amongst the people with a light, learning from these stories. And this is why it's so important for us to understand and to change from these majalises. We learn many lessons. We learn ethical lessons, moral lessons, and spiritual lessons. Because why? Because this is what Imam Hassan alayhi salam sacrificed his life for. Yazid had completely destroyed the ethics and morals of society. And when you want to destroy a community, you attack their ethics and morals. And you see societies today. They're regressing farther than anything ever before. Why? Because morals and ethics are being destroyed. If one stays true to their ethics and morals, you'll never go astray. Akhlaq, understanding. How are we today? How do we treat others? Akhlaq and ethics and morals are one of the greatest characteristics we can have if you want to become companions of our Imam today. I'll tell you guys a story. There was a man who wanted to see the Imam over time. And we have some narrations, and they tell us that if you go to Masjid Sahla for 40 nights and 40 odd days, and you do ziyarat, you have a chance of seeing them. We have many du'as and narrations like this. So this man, you know what? He tried to do this. 40 nights passed, nothing happened. He's like, what's going on? Why am I not seeing the Imam? Why am I getting no signs? Am I not a good person? So one day he sees the Imam in his dream, and the Imam tells him, go to this location tomorrow and be there. He's like, okay, I'm going to go do that. So he goes to that location, and he's sitting there, and he sees a shop. Basically, it's a locksmith. And he's waiting. He's like, what's going on here? Why am I here? And he sees people coming to the locksmith, and he sees one lady come to the locksmith. And she asks him, how much is to fix this lock? He goes like 5 toman, or for example, $5. She goes like, thank you so much. I am new here, I'm a visitor, and every other locksmith I went to, they've been charging me 10, 15. They're trying to rip me off and to gain money. They know I'm a new stranger here. I've come to visit the people. So he's listening to this conversation, and the Imam, to the person, he's like, okay, he's understanding, and he sees a person standing there. He goes to that person, he calls him over, he says, and the person just tells him one thing. He says, if you wish to see the Imam or be a companion of the Imam in general, you don't need to do all this worship and all this ziyarat. You just need to be like this person, who's fair, who's a good representative of us. Imam Shafi'i alayhi salam has said what? Salawat Allah salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Oh Shia, be an adornment for us. Represent our akhlaq and our morals. Like I said, mentioned many times before, if you're not a good person, everything that you do goes to waste. These majalis go to waste if you're not becoming a better person. And this is why it's so important to learn to change yourselves, brothers and sisters. And this is why Imam Hassan alayhi salam, in his will, he wrote that the will that he wrote to his brother Hanafiya, he wrote that I'm only going to change the hearts of the people. To change, make a reform in the hearts and the ummah of Rasulullah. And he says, I'm not going for any political reason, for any gain in this life whatsoever. Because oftentimes people, it's important to mention this because people have misconstrued the conception of what happened. They say that he rose up for power, he rose up for wealth, for politics. And you often hear this. Unfortunately, you have to understand Do we even know who Imam Hassan is for us to ever think like that? People don't understand who he was. Look at his family. He was Rasulullah's grandson. You know, once you have a story that Rasulullah, Angel Jibreel came to him, and he said, I'll give you the miftah for all the treasures of the world. And if you take these keys for all the wealth in the world, your position will not be lowered on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You'll still be the highest maqam Mahmud. You can have these keys. You can have everything you want in the world. You become like Nabi Sulaiman and even more. So Rasulullah, he says something very powerful. He says, I don't want it. They say, why? He says, because I'd rather one day be able to ask Allah and then the next day be able to thank Allah for what He gives. They don't want the wealth of this world. We look at Imam Ali alayhi salam, his father. Imam Ali alayhi salam one day was fixing his shoe or his sandal, and a companion came to him and they asked him, what are you doing? He's like, I'm fixing. Remember, number one, he's fixing his own shoe. Imam Ali alayhi salam could have anything he wanted. He's not throwing his shoes away. He's fixing his own shoe. He's repairing it. They come to him and they ask him, you know, what are you doing? He says, I'm doing this. He says, you know, companion, this dunya and this caliphate, first he asks him, how much is this shoe worth? The companion says, worth close to nothing. He says, you know what? This caliphate and this dunya is worth less than this shoe. He's showing us what it means to become detached from this world, to understand the position of this dunya and Allah's love. He says, it's worth less than this shoe if I could not save people from oppression and do righteous things. These were his parents. His grandfather, his father. We can go down to his mother. Sayyidah Fatima Zahra one day, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain were sick. So Rasulullah told them a nidr. Fast for 3 days and they'll become better. So the first day they start their fast. They're fasting all day, they're hungry. It's time for fast. A visitor comes. He says, I'm hungry, I need food. He was a poor person. Sayyidah Fatima Zahra gives all the food that they had to them. They break their fast the first night with water. The second day, they're fasting again. Someone comes and says, I need help, I'm a traveler. They give all their food to them. The second night, they break their fast with water. The third night, same thing happens. Another person comes. They give their fast, they give all their food away, and they break their fast with water. 3 days, they just drank water all day. You say these people love the world? Imam Hussain wanted power and position? Who are his parents? You have to understand this, you know? He wanted to detach himself from the world. He had nothing to do with this world. You know, Ubaydullah bin Ziyad captured the people and to turn them towards Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He wrote a letter to them. He says, oh people, Yazid, you know, is a praiseworthy man. He gives you guys money. He honors you with money. And he has increased your sustenance, and now he wishes to even give you even more money. And he's going to raise all your wages. And if you support him against his war against Hussein alayhi salam. This is how he got the people. The number one reason was wealth, attachment to this life. You know, people had lost all God consciousness. They were too attached to wealth and this life. And that was the problem. We have a story of Nabi Ibrahim. Nabi Ibrahim one day, he was walking. And he was a shepherd and he had sheep. And he saw a man praying to Allah, saying, oh Allah, I'm poor, give me some wealth. So he goes to him and gives him half his sheep. He had 800 sheep, he gave him 400. And he walks by, he sees the man praying again. Nabi Ibrahim goes back and gives him more. He sees him praying again, he gives him more. He sees him praying again, he goes back. Till he only has 2 sheep left. He's like, you know what, here man, I see you making an honest, sincere dua to Allah. You seem to be someone who loves God. I love God as well. And because of that, I'm going to give you everything. So he gave him all of the sheep that he had. This man then turns into Angel Jibreel. And he says, you passed the test. You passed the test. Why? Because your love for Allah was more than the gifts we've given you in this life. So we ask ourselves, what do we love more? Do we love Allah more, or we attach to money? This is very important. Why? Because this is how those people were against, and they're able to kill the grandson of Rasulullah. This attachment to this world. You know, there was a study done by a Harvard professor. And what he did, he interviewed millionaires. And When he interviewed millionaires, he would go to them and ask them. He went to the first person with $3 million. He says, "Are you satisfied?" He's like, "No." He's like, "What would make you satisfied?" "If I had 3 times as much money, $9 million. He's like, "Okay, cool." He goes to someone with $9 million. "Are you satisfied?" He's like, "No." He's like, "What would make you satisfied?" 3 times more money. He goes to someone with $100 million. "What would make you satisfied?" "Are you satisfied?" "No." $1 billion. He goes to someone with $1 billion. Are you satisfied? No. This love of this dunya, love of money, and chasing money and wealth will never satisfy you, brothers and sisters. Nothing in this life will. You hold on to this money, it's going to make you go astray. You have to detach yourself from this dunya, especially from your wealth, because Allah gives and Allah takes. And especially for those who don't give charity, I'll give you a quick story about charity. Especially for your mosque, for your community, for those who need help. Nabi Isa alayhi salam was walking one day with his companion, and they see a house celebrating. So Nabi Isa alayhi salam tells the companion, "This house tomorrow is going to be crying." So the next day they wake up and they're walking. The companions see the house is still celebrating. They're like, "What's going on?" Nabi Isa, "Did you lie?" So Nabi Isa alayhi salam, "Let's go, let's take a walk." They go to the house. So they say, "What was going on yesterday? There was a wedding." He says, "Can I speak to the bride?" He comes to the bride. He says, "Oh bride, did you do anything special last night?" She says, "Yeah, after the wedding, someone came and asked for money. So I gave him money in charity." So then what happens? He says, "You know, last night Allah had given me the knowledge that you were supposed to die. But because of this charity that you gave, Allah decided to extend your life. So understand this. Spend on the way of Allah, Allah spends on you. Charity can even extend your entire life. Be selfless and give in the way of Allah." Imam Sallallahu Islam, he would say, and even on his way to Karbala, people are slaves of this world. And religion is only just words on their tongues. And why I stress this so much is because these last 10 nights I've been telling you ways to increase your spirituality, ways to transform yourself. But the most important final step is detachment from this life and this world. You know, yesterday I mentioned the story of a traveler who went on a journey to meet the Imam and he thought about soap. Just like this, we are attached to this dunya. You know, when you see people, for example, I was watching an interview of people who lost their homes in a tragedy. They said our entire life is gone. How can we live anymore? They're in despair. They've lost everything. We have attached our hearts and our lives to this dunya and this wealth. And this could be our biggest demise. We become a slave to the world. For example, look at the youth people. Not only the world, you also become slaves to social media. It becomes even worse. Selfies, likes. If you don't get likes on your pictures, you're going to start getting depressed. If you take away the social media accounts of half the youth here, they're going to go into depression. Why? Because you've attached yourself, your self-esteem, and everything to this dunya. This social media, this dunya, everything there is. And this is going to be your biggest downfall. You know, there's a study done. About 60 million people are depressed every single year. And one of the main reasons depression is low self-esteem. And they did a study to show that low self-esteem, people who attach themselves and their esteem and their worth to this world and to materials and to social media and how much people like their pictures, how many followers they have the lowest self-esteem. But the people who attach their desires and the importance to non-materialistic things like faith and religion have the highest self-esteem. So understand this, brothers and sisters. We have to become completely detached from this life as best as we can. You know, we remember the story of Nabi Ayub yesterday. When Allah took away everything, He says, "Allah, you're the one who gave me everything in the first place. His children, his wealth, and his houses." And I stress this point over and over again because this worldly attachment could be our downfall, brothers and sisters. The only way to immortalize yourself, to become remembered forever, like the companions, is to completely detach yourself and your heart from this world and attach it to Allah. And this is what Imam Hussain and the companions did. Because you may end up praying the Imam when time comes that's tough. You may end up betraying Allah for your worldly needs. If your heart's not detached from now. Train yourself now to detach your world and your life. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he once came to the companions and he spoke to them. He went to their graveyard and he spoke to the people in the grave. And he says, O inhabitants of the lonely homes, O inhabitants of the lonely graves, O people who give up for this world, became slaves of this dunya. All those homes that used to fight each other for, and all this wealth they used to fight each other for, other people live in those homes. This is the truth of his life. He says, oh people, the world and the people used to give up Allah for, your wives and husbands, they're remarried now. As for your money and all the wealth that you've attained, others have taken them and they have fought amongst themselves. Everything that you were a slave to this dunya is gone and given to someone else. And what's left, you're left alone in this grave. And the only thing that you have is how close you are to Allah, and that's the only thing that's saving you. Brothers and sisters, the most important step that we have in our spiritual growth, as I mentioned, is detachment from this world. That's how you truly become successful. If you look at the story of the people of the cave, Ashab al-Kahf, those who are immortalized in the Quran, they were youth who had everything. But a king said, I'm going to make sure I take away everyone's faith. They left their town, detached everything from their dunya, and they went to the cave. And Allah kept them alive and immortalized them in the Quran. Allah teaches us these lessons over and over again so we understand that to grow spiritually, we need to become detached from the dunya. We look at the story of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. What did Allah ask him to do? He went through many tests in his life, many trials. Allah asked him to sacrifice his son. Why? Because that was his closest attachment. His biggest attachment to this life was his son. And when he did it, he passed the test. And after he passed all these tests, Allah says to him, I have now made you an imam amongst the people. He did not reach the status of imam unless he went through these tests in life. Just like that, all of us will be tested by wealth, by all these things in this life. And that's how we become immortalized, when we pass this test, and we give up this worldly attachments. You know, everyone has this attachment. Even Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he loved his son Ali Akbar alayhi salam. And you know when Ali Akbar alayhi salam went to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he refused everyone else. But when it came to Ali Akbar alayhi salam, he said, go. He did not hesitate once to let him go. Why? Because he himself, his heart was only attached to Allah. And that was his ismail, to sacrifice in the way of Allah. Just like that, all of us will have this attachment to this life, whatever it may be. Learn to detach yourself before it's too late, brothers and sisters. Because that's how you'll grow spiritually. Save your heart only for Allah. You know, on the night before Ashura, tonight actually, the battle is intended to take place tonight, on the night of the 9th. But Imam Hassan sent Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam to the army and told them to extend it for one more night. He says, oh, why, brother? He says, I want one more night to pray to Allah, to worship Allah. This is how much he loved Allah. His heart was only for Allah. And this is the recurring theme that we have throughout these nights. To understand, attach yourself to Allah only, brothers and sisters. That's how you're going to be saved in this life. And that's how you'll always be on the right path. Now, and that's how you can serve the Imam today. You know, it says that when Imam cried out, Hal min nasirin yansurna, why did he cry out, Hal min nasirin yansurna, when no one was left? Did you ever ask yourself this question? Did anyone ask himself this question? Why was he crying this out when there was no one left? Even after all the companions, all the Ahl-Bayt were martyred, he still cried out, is there anyone there to help me? Who was he talking to? All of you. All of us here today. And this is why these majalis are so important. Because Imam was asking us for help. Because today we have an Imam today, he's Garib. These nights we've been teaching lessons, characteristics, qualities to transform yourselves. So you can leave these nights different people, better companions of the Imam today. Because that's how you're going to help the Imam. By keeping up the teachings of his grandfather Rasulullah. To become and to do the reform which he died for and sacrificed his entire life for amongst ourselves. And this is why these nights are so important, brothers and sisters. You know, we always say we're servants of Imam Hussain al-Islam. But Imam Hussain al-Islam needs more than servants. He needs people who are brave like Ali Akbar. Those who are selfless like Abbas. Those who have sabr like Zainab. Those companions like Habib, as I mentioned in the starting, who will give up anything for the Imam. And this is what we need to aim to achieve in this life, brothers and sisters. So if tonight is the night that you need to think about to change, honor Imam Hussain al-Islam by promising him to change if you haven't done so already. Let this night be the night of Islah and reformation for you. Salawat. Let's all recite together, brothers and sisters. As-salamu ala al-Hussain. Everyone together, please send your salams to the Imams today and their companions. As-salamu Ali ibn al-Hussain wa ala awlad al-Hussain wa ala ansar al-Hussain wa ala ashab al-Hussain ya laytana kunna ma'akum. When we say this, we wish we can be there with them. And to be there with them, we have to reform, brothers and sisters. Tonight, on this lonely night of Karbala, on Ashura, take your hearts, all of us, let's take our hearts to the plains of Karbala. This is the last night that the companions and the family of Rasulullah will get to see the face of Imam Hussain al-Islam. The last night, Sakina, Ruqayya, the daughters will get to see the face of Imam Hussain al-Islam. You know, he sat there and he asked his companions to leave him. This is how merciful he was. He said, "Oh companions, please leave me. You're going to be killed tomorrow." And most of them stayed, but you know, some of them actually left. And I wonder, how can those companions leave when they heard the children crying, "Alatash, Alatash"? How can they leave when they knew that the children are going to become orphans? How can those companions leave? You know, some narrations say that Imam Hussain al-Islam on nights of Ashura, he was walking around the grounds and picking up thorns. And they asked him, "Why are you picking up thorns?" They say, "Because tomorrow my children, my daughters will be chased and they'll be running around. And I don't want their beautiful feet to be touched with these thorns." And what happened the next day, brothers and sisters? Not only, what did people do? What did the armies do to his children? He was caring for their feet. He didn't want a tiny little thorn to go into them. And yet, the next day the armies did unspeakable things to his family. You know, a poet, the night before Ashura, he recites, and he speaks to the sun. He speaks, "Oh sun, please don't rise. Oh night, be as long as possible, because tonight is the last night of Hussein. Tomorrow's dawn, Sakina will be an orphan. Tomorrow's dawn, Zainab's heart will be broken. Tomorrow's dawn, Abbas's arms will be cut off. Tomorrow's dawn, You'll hear Ali Asghar cry. It says, "O time, what a bad friend you are. Look what you're doing to the grandson of Rasulullah." The morning came, and Imam Hassan spent his entire day carrying the bodies of his companions, of his children left and right, of his brother, of his family members. He spent his entire day hearing the cries of Al-Atash, Al-Atash from Sakina. It says, after everyone was gone and everyone left him alone, he cried out, "Hal min nasir yansurna?" Is there anyone left to help me? Is there anyone left to help the grandson of Rasulullah? Is there anyone to help these children? My children will become yatim. Is there anyone left to help us? It says Imam Zain al-Abidin, as sick as he was, he came out. He tried. He went to his grandfather Hussein. He says, "Ya Abedi, Aina al-Habib?" And he answers to him, "They slaughtered my friend Habib." He says, "Where's my friend Habib? Where's your friend Habib?" And he says, "Ya Abati, Aina Lali Akbar?" He says, "Oh my dear son, they cut him into pieces." He says, "Ya Abati, my dear father, where's Qasim?" He says, "Ya Bunayya, they cut him into pieces. The horse is trampled upon his body." He says, "Ya Abati, Aina Amu Abbas? Ya Bunayya, they cut his arms off." He says, "Oh my son, all my companions have left me. There's no one left." And this is the moment he went to hold his daughter, Suhaina, in his arms and said goodbye to her. She had lost her uncle. She only had hope with her father. Now she knew she's going to remain thirsty. She knew she's going to become an orphan. Do you remember the time when Hassan put his head on the daughter of Muslim bin Aqil, and he told her, "Do not worry, you're not an orphan. I'm here for you." 3 days later, his daughter had become an orphan. Imam Hassan ran bravely into the battlefield, heartbroken, back broken, but the love of Allah kept him going. He fought bravely left and right, for he was a son of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. But at one point, Umar bin Saad saw that he couldn't go on. He told his army, "Whoever has swords, go strike him. Whoever has spears, go strike him." And those with swords came to strike him. Those with spears came to strike him. The son of Rasulullah, the son of Zahra, he was alone. And those who didn't have swords and those who didn't have spears, they picked up the rocks and whatever they can pick up to throw on his body. You know, it says that he would come back to the tents every now and then and recite La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And this is how the people and his family, his daughter, Sukaina, she would know that he was alive. His son Zainab would know he was alive. And they would stay next to the tent and stay close to the battlefield to hear these cries from Abu Abdullah. So it says that one time, after a while, they didn't hear it for a while. But they heard the sounds of the horse, they were excited. His daughter was excited, she came outside to see her father. But the horse came back empty. Sakina, she knew that her father had become an orphan. Zainab knew that her brother was gone. Zainab runs outside screaming, "Ya wa Muhammada wa Aliya." She runs to the hill to see what have they done to the body of her brother Hussein. She runs and she says, "What are you doing to my body of my brother Hussein? Wa Husseina, wa Husseina." And it says, she recites, "O dunya, what have you done to the son of Zahra? Oh Shimmer, what are you doing to his holy head? Oh Shimmer, what are you doing to the head that Rasulullah had kissed? Oh dunya, How have you left the daughters of Hussein orphans? Oh Dunya, why is Hussein's head on a spear? إن الله وإن الله راجعون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا مظلوم. السلام عليك يا قريب. إن الله وإن الله راجعون.
كلام الشيخ زينب ومصايبها. الإمام الحسن يقول له لا يومك يومك يا أبا عبد الله. وزينب راح تشوف رحمة الدنيا تقول له ما